welcome back. Oh my God. Trying to navigate these sister wives relationships is worse than watching the last season of Game of Thrones. I swear. So I originally produced a video in response to all of this sister wives drama. I worked on it for 2 weeks and I went down a rabbit hole and decided to just binge watch the entire series before releasing that video to get a fuller understanding of what the show was about and what went wrong. I was really looking for how to end that video. But that actually led me to scrap the entire video that I made and do this one instead. So get yourself a nice cup of tea, coffee, hot cocoa. I'm having hot cocoa right now. And settle in, and I'll see you in a minute.
My name is Cody Brown, and you've got to meet my family. I'm a polygamist, but we're not the polygamists you think you know. I have 3 awesome wives, Mary, Janelle, and Christine. And I have 12 wonderful children. My family's on the verge of a huge change. Because love should be multiplied, not divided.
So the original video I did dealt a bit with the roles women play in these patriarchal structures, and I kind of delved into the history of the 4 wives. I will still be including that in the slides that I'm doing along with this video, but those will just be kind of an aside now, because I've done a lot of research and I do counseling. I do spiritual counseling for, I've done that for a living for many years. I'm retired now, but anyway, so I did have a bit about kind of where each woman fits in the caste structure of these polygamous families, but that wasn't nearly a deep enough delve into what I really wanted to share, which was a deeper understanding of the situation. There are a lot of videos on YouTube, lots of articles, blogs, tweets covering sister wives, and they all put these 4 women into specific artificial roles consisting of the wives they love and the wives they hate, and turning these women into 2-dimensional characters who will never be anything more or less than the roles the public has constructed for them. But that's not good enough for me. And while roles of caste do exist within these polygamous units, it's absolutely true that the women absolutely move pretty fluidly through those roles, depending on the stage of the relationship they're in, and depending on, who leaves and enters these family structures. Take Christine, for instance, who said she never wanted to be a first or second wife. She wanted to be a third wife. But when a new wife entered the picture, for all intents and purposes, Christine took on the role of first wife, as the triad she had existed in for all those years changed, and she began experiencing the same issues adjusting herself to this new structure that Mary did when Cody married Janelle. So this is going to be a bit of a different video in that mine doesn't paint Robin as the bad guy. I think she's an easy target, and while it may be human nature to pick Robin apart because she's the favored wife, the truth is every polygamous unit has a favored wife. And I believe that those accusations are a response by people who have also been conditioned into the same patriarchal structure they accuse these women of opting for. Robin's been targeted as the bad guy when all these women have engaged in far worse behavior than she. In fact, she's been kind of the peacemaker. She's kind of always acquiesced to the other wives and to Cody, with just a few exceptions, and she's tried to fit herself into this new family structure. The truth is, the problem isn't Robin or Mary or Christine or Janelle. The problem is polygamy. And it's ironic that a show that attempted to normalize polygamy as a healthy alternative to monogamy and a viable religious right wound up providing the exact opposite.
This, because I need to communicate where I'm coming from. And I guess I want to say is, why did you enter the principle?
Whoa. I wonder where she's going with this.
The principle for us is the real term for plural marriage. It's the principle of plural marriage. I mean, it's really a gospel principle for us. So in our community, it's shortened to the principle.
No, I am surprised. I did not know what her questions would be. Wow, okay.
I mean, I did it because I love the whole idea of the whole family and this whole group synergy. And I really felt like we would get progression, right? The whole idea is that we overcome our crap.
Yeah.
The whole purpose, we truly believe, of living plural marriage is that you have to learn how to not be selfish.
I mean, I don't know. I guess for me, it was just like being raised in it. My dad took his first plural wife when I was like 11 years old. I had a lot of years with other moms and other siblings that weren't just from my mom. So it wasn't out of the ordinary for me.
I like the example that my grandmas were, for sure. They were just really close, and after my grandpa died, they just stayed together. So I like the sisterhood.
To me, that's what family was a lot of grandmas. And then I had 2 moms, and so that's what a normal family was to me, was a lot of moms.
The big family thing was always really cool to me. I loved when I first met you guys, how you guys functioned. I loved it. You know, when I saw you guys at the house in Lehigh.
We seemed so functional.
Boy, we pulled the wool over your eyes.
Oh my gosh, wow. I never said that. I still think that still exists.
And I've thought about this a lot lately because I've told friends recently that I didn't want to be an advocate of plural marriage anymore because I am more aware now than I ever was before the apparent and obvious unfairness in the relationship.
Some are up, some are down, but it's, you know, it's always changing.
I know I have all the love I want, and you guys sometimes feel like you're pining constantly for me to, you know, give you some. I mean, the other day I was having dinner with Logan and I was like going, I have really messed this up. We came into this by way of commandment. We felt like we were supposed to live it, and we had an ideal that it was a better way, and it come to a stark reality of the struggle that it is.
Most people who are attracted to polygamy because of religious indoctrination are not polyamorous people. Therein lies the little problem. Polyamorous relationships are not illegal. Polygamous relationships are. Cody and the women spent the entire series, well, you know, until everything fell apart, trying to convince us that they were above the law because of their religious beliefs. Let's be clear. Polygamy is illegal in the United States. When they fled to Nevada, polygamy was illegal there. When they fled to Arizona, polygamy was also illegal there. They all chose polygamy knowing it was against the law, and then complained about the restraints and negative consequences their own choices had upon their lives, insisting that polygamy be normalized, knowing full well the negative impact it was having not only on their own lives, but on the lives of the majority of women and children trapped in these warped patriarchal constructs. Polygamy is associated with lower marital satisfaction. It's known to involve sexual, physical, and emotional abuse on the part of the husband. and sometimes other wives. Women become disempowered, restricted, and shallow, resigned to living a complex emotional state of despair, longing, and distress. The central feelings of their existence are negative emotions of anger, sadness, loneliness, powerlessness. Most of these women are not polyamorous and do not want to share their husbands. They are indoctrinated to do it, and as a result, they long for romantic monogamous relationships with their husbands, where they don't have to vie or compete for their husband's attention. And because they wind up having to do just that, they wind up feeling despair, denigrated, diminished. Just look at sister wives. They're like on the spectrum of like reasons not to participate in polygamy. Understand the difference between religious indoctrination, polygamy, and being a true polyamorous person. Dissociation and parentification are central coping strategies, and they become the fabric of who these women are. And when you're not wired to be a polyamorous person and are just doing polygamy because your religion or your culture has indoctrinated you, you will never be okay with conforming yourself to it. You might be able to fool yourself for a while, but you will not be okay with the structures of polygamy, nor the injustice and inequality of polygamy. You will either leave or you will resign yourself to a life characterized by hopelessness, despair, and helplessness, and you will reassign the roles of your children and rely on them as a source of comfort and strength. Not only will all those children be used to comfort you, they will also be used to be the caretakers of all the children you decided to produce. As seen with the Browns, whenever the wives go away, Cody is not the caretaker of the children. The other children are. Cody acts as if he's the big brother of all those kids who are having their needs met by the older children.
Do you know, I mean, I think that, at least for me, living in a plural marriage situation versus monogamy, it's really taught me a lot about the word commitment and the meaning of commitment. In our marriages, we really have to give and take, and we really cannot be selfish. I mean, and so I've had to really learn about, there are times when I am unhappy or things aren't going well, or just like in any other relationship, it's like you just have to be committed. You say, it's like you have to honor the idea that you are committed to this and you're going to see it through thick or thin. And it always works out. It always has, at the end of the trouble period, you're like, okay, wow, that was worth it. I'm glad we stuck it out.
I think that in order to keep our marriages strong, it's very important that we be forgiving, number one. And then we let things that are offensive or hurtful pass and find passion and connection.
So the beginning of this series consisted of the Brown family trying to convince us how unified they were as a family. They all attempted to sweeten their reality, which we now know wasn't quite so sweet, and present the entirety of their relationships in a positive light. It didn't really come out fully until later seasons that there was never unity. There was always dysfunction. That family never worked. I mean, from the very beginning until now, 20, 30 years later, Janelle and Mary can't bear to ride in the same car together alone with each other. Couldn't have conversations that didn't consist of defensiveness, distrust, and resentment. All these women have filled their lives with negative space, filled with co-wife jealousy, rivalry, and an unequal distribution of familial and emotional resources, sharing a man none of them were wired to share. And this has resulted in hostility, not only among the co-wives, but hostility that's now been inherited down to the children of the specific wives. Maybe with the exception being Christine, who found her self-worth or tried to show the family that she was worth esteem by taking care of everyone's children. It was her identity for very many years. But it's culminated in finger pointing toward Robin, who's potentially the only really true polyamorous person. And I'm not even convinced of that yet, because she's the easy target and none of them are focusing toward the core of the problem. They may be indoctrinated into polygamy, but they are not polyamorous people. There's no equality in any of these relationships. For all the years these people have been in therapy, the only thing they've taken away are keywords they use as weapons against each other. It's crazy. The smallest question or criticism is now met with, "I don't feel safe." Really? All they gained are deflection strategies using words like safe to shut down dialogue that goes under the surface to the real issues that they're having. And the truth is, they've moved 19 times. Cody is like Don Quixote, and the wives follow him around and watch him trying to defeat these allegorical dragons everywhere. They've watched this guy fail so many times, they no longer trust him. They don't trust him to lead them, or that he'll take them to places where they can thrive and grow. As far as I'm concerned, all of these women are codependent enablers, and it's clear that we have a lot of trauma bonding serving as the cohesive element of these relationships.
The benefits for plural marriages is that there is a lot more blessings and there's a lot more love. I mean, there's a lot more support. You don't have to, I've seen it over and over and over again where if I'm having a bad day, I know I've got, besides you, Cody, I know I've got 3 other adults that are going to sit there and support and help with these kids.
The one thing that I found in this family is that each mother has been able to crisscross to another mother's child and actually be the one that reaches that child. I know that Christine had an amazing ability to reach Janelle's children. And now, just as Christine said, Robin has been able to reach Christine's children. It seems like we are meeting the needs of our children in many cases better than we would have as just monogamous.
Well, and I think our children bear witness of that. I mean,
so let me dust off my counselor's hat here for a moment. Trauma bonding is simply the process by which we're attracted to others because we carry similar wounds as they do. We can relate to them. These people who are raised in the indoctrination of polygamy have shared experiences that have caused them to carry emotional trauma. However, confusing shared trauma for compatibility is one of the most toxic relationship patterns that we can follow. We have to have more reasons to remain connected than trauma. I mean, sure, the raising of children can often be a distraction to those issues. But when they no longer need our focus, those children, guess what? Bang-a-rang, there those problems are. We should never, ever confuse our ability to hurt the same with our capacity to love the same. And that is a huge problem in the Brown family.
It has had to be always positive and upbeat and whatever you need and absolutely. And
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like, I didn't mind. It was what I did, and it was completely fine until it wasn't. All of a sudden, I just realized I couldn't anymore. My dad talked to me. It was actually my dad. My dad's a very sweetest, most loving guy. And he's like, at what point are you going to start saying no? And he goes, you're always saying yes to everything. When are you going to start saying no? And I'm like, oh gosh.
So the next day you woke up and you said, you know what, I'm going to change this dynamic.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to start standing up for myself.
Yeah.
And the moment you started standing up for yourself, Cody didn't like that change in personality.
No.
He didn't hear you.
I think that
He didn't
he
hear.
heard, but he had no idea what to do because I had changed so much in the blink. Everything changed. And Cody withdrew, and then I withdrew, and we just withdrew.
I know that your time in therapy is a very private time. What did that unearth? Like, what did that peel back for you guys?
Awful.
Early stuff that just never healed?
Yes. Stuff where I was like, oh my gosh, you hold grudges way longer than I do. Way longer. Yeah, I know. Stuff that shocked me completely.
We get to a point where it's great experience and it's a struggle, and it's great experience and it's a struggle. And then we end up in Las Vegas after she's told me she hates plural marriage, while she's at the same time pretty much, telling the whole world how awesome it is.
She had mentioned to me grudges, that you could never let go of some grudges.
I don't carry grudges. No, if somebody says I hold a grudge, they're full of it. They don't know who I am. They don't know me.
She also shared with me that the moment that she started saying no and not being the happy Christine that you liked, that you fell in love with, the woman that lifted your burden, that became a heavy lift for you. Is it fair to say that? Or can you validate what she said?
We can sit and say that the he said, she said, till the cows come home. And she's told you things that I fundamentally disagree with.
Okay.
And all I'm doing now is defending myself.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you now, Suki.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about Christina anymore.
Well, I've been kind of watching the news, and they're starting to talk about everybody staying home, but I have Garrison, who works with construction crews and stuff here in town. I've got Gabriel, who is being careful associating with his friends, but I can't guarantee what that looks like yet. So instead of sitting here and waiting to be told or having something horrible happen that makes a decision, I'm just going to make the decision. I want Cody to stay away from my home until we can figure out how bad this is going to get.
But Cody, I have this because I have boys that are working outside the house, Garrison. And this is nobody's fault. It's just circumstance. And I'm trying to be really brave and really smart and really logical, because I don't know what that's like to not see you for that long.
Yes, this is hard for me, but I'm trying to stay in that clinical, logical place.
I present a risk. My household presents a risk.
Sometimes I just don't quite understand everything going on in this family. I don't know why she's just calling me and telling me just, like, hey, this is the way it's going to be.
No, I would worry too much that there could be risk.
I mean, you and I will survive this. You're going to owe me big time, buddy man, when we're done here.
I wish you could have had a camera on me. That's a statement of pressure. Like, you got to make up for this somehow. What? You're making these choices and you're telling the kids to continue with what's normally in their lives, and I'm supposed to pay for that? When we were at Nancy's, I kind of lit it off. We're family, but we're not acting married. My relationship with Mary is at best just distant and amicable.
Like, the relationship between he and I is gone. It's dead. It's over.
I could buck up, put my backup hack on and go for a run, be tough about it, but I'm not interested in it. For all my marriage with Mary, I felt like she unloads her emotions into a burden that I'm supposed to carry. I'm not carrying this burden because there's no reason that I should. I haven't put relationship effort into that relationship specifically because I have 3 other relationships that are rewarding and wholesome, and with children that need me, need to see me.
I'm really careful about pushing Cody because I don't want him to feel like I'm being demanding or pushy or anything like that. So I feel like I've made it known to him enough, you know, where I want the relationship to go, as far as even like just moving forward and just starting to figure things out. It's best to like leave the ball in his court.
Neither of us see real value in the relationship. Because if Mary and I really wanted to be together, we would.
And Cody really is the central dysfunctional being around which all these family members orbit. He's estranged from many of his adult children, and he has rocky relationships at best with the rest of them. He even refers to some of them by identifying them as his wife's children. Does he think that makes them feel loved? Do they feel love when he brags that Robin's kids follow his rules and because of that has his favor and attention? So much for unconditional love, I guess. Making his wives choose between him and their children? How does that make his kids feel? Love thrives in the context of freedom and belonging, and it shrinks in the context of obedience and shame. It's intertwined with giving of ourselves, and it withers away in these transactional contexts. And Cody is nothing if not transactional. He's so self-involved. He's empathetic unless one of his family members makes a choice he doesn't understand or doesn't approve of. He's got a little bit of Peter Pan syndrome going on for sure. And I'm not going to be rude and say he's a worthless chucklehead. I mean, he's a good emotional coach to his wives when they're birthing his children. He's a good co-pilot to back up his wives when they're dealing with the younger children, but he's really not effective in meeting the daily needs of anyone. He doesn't have a lot of emotional or spiritual intelligence. He never learned how to process the consequences of his words and his actions. There seems to be kind of an emotional void within him that causes him to be a dreamer with no capacity for structuring his desires into results or reality. He gets an idea, forces everyone to follow his dream, and then gets distracted with the new and the next, leaving everyone else to pick up his pieces. You know, at one point he took to Twitter to explain why he doesn't really think his kids miss each other. He said the biggest struggle with my kids complaining about missing each other was that none of them were seeing each other before the coronapocalypse. He tells the cameras, listen, I've been sympathetic to this situation with Janelle and her kids this entire time. And I tolerated it a lot for a very long time until I realized that I was being lied to or deceived. And at that point was when I sort of lost my patience with it. I'm like, you need to just make the boys move out. Breaking some big rules on his list, though, in another episode, when entering Janelle's house, he walks in, doesn't take his shoes off, doesn't change his clothes, and just sits down in a recliner without showering. Robin hugs Mary, then realized that was a big no-no. This stuff happens. But when you hold everyone else to a standard that you're not willing to police just as hard, then you're a hypocrite, and it's not even about the rules. He said, I'm going to have Gabriel and Garrison move out of the house. I'm sorry, here's the problem. Janelle's name is on the lease, so I can't evict them. He said, I understand that these two need their social lives. I totally get it. But in this case, COVID is different. It's changing everything for everybody, and they want it all to be the same. They need to realize that they should go out and date that girlfriend. That's fine. But you need to move out of the house so I can be home. What? What? See, the thing is, Gabe and Garrison were following the same protocols as Robin's nanny and her husband. Cody's COVID commandments were the hill he chose to die on. His hypocrisy was so blatant that he lost any shred of remaining respect he had. He actually expected his wives and children to live in seclusion. If anyone had jobs and school and social lives, they should be kicked out for his own benefit and because of his own fear. The CDC guidelines weren't good enough for him. If his wives didn't sequester themselves and wipe their mail off with sanitized wipes, they couldn't see him. And he says, "Are you too lazy to do a few chores?" All these things are little chores. He suggested it's acceptable for his children to see their friends as long as they keep 10-foot distance. But why didn't he use that same protocol to visit his own children? He could have maintained a new normal by visiting different groups of his kids every day, keeping a 10-foot distance. You know, grab one of those chairs, sit outside, spend a couple hours visiting. You know, I get that COVID was a scary unknown. We've been really lucky in that we haven't dealt with a worldwide pandemic in our lifetime like this prior to this. This thing messed with all of us. But COVID-19 did not destroy the Brown family. This split has been coming for a long time. This was a house of cards built on the sketchy idea that ideological polygamy was a viable life choice. Cody should have gone to his daughter's spine surgery, full stop. He's looking for excuses, but because he's the one that's gotten too lazy to do the hard work of dealing with the consequences of his choices in life, not his wife's. And he uses Robin to rub against his other wives, to rub it in, indicating that she obeys him, she follows his rules, and allows him to play his king of the hill patriarchal game with her. And he just doesn't know why he didn't do this sooner. He insulted his other wives for sure, but he just told the entire world that Robin is his doormat. Which has to be a warning to Robin about what will happen to her if she uses her own mind and pushes back to make her own choices. So my takeaway is this. Trustworthy people don't expect others to trust and follow them blindly. They welcome skepticism and are willing to explain their motivations, even if those motivations are selfish. They want you to open your eyes and consent to the relationship in an open and honest manner. They understand the necessity of compromise and following better ideas. They don't create ultimatums and then tantrum when their demands don't work. They don't allow their egos to lead them. Geez, even kings don't have the kind of power Cody wants. Again, to bring this all back around, Cody is not a polyamorous person. He's an opportunist using his religion to play games with other people's lives. When the going gets tough, Cody gets distracted and angry and abusive. So at the end of the day, we know the statistics as far as the effects polygamy has on families all over the world. Not just in the religious sects who practice it here. Polygamy doesn't work out well for women, children, and low-status men. That's a fact. The Browns argue that the negative behaviors associated with polygamy occur because they're illegal and they're taboo. But plural marriage is associated with those negative outcomes even in cultures where plural marriage is neither taboo nor illegal. And this whole grand experiment, the reason Cody and the wives decided to to get into this has come full circle. Whatever the show presents next, nothing will ever be the same for the Browns. They had a lot of talk about polygamy and how wonderful it was and how well it worked, but they couldn't bring the receipts. They couldn't back up anything they said. And they ruined their lives trying to do it. Their family is fractured. And I just don't know what they can do to get back on or to find a healthy path forward in their lives. But I certainly know if that's the intention, Cody Brown can't be the one to lead them.